Finally, after weeks of going on about the polytunnel, I get to introduce you to the Polycrub. It's not exactly a polytunnel. It is a greenhouse polytunnel hybrid, and I'm going to take you through what it is. We're gonna have a look around today, why I chose this over every other greenhouse and polytunnel on the market, and why it might actually be a good option for you as well. Let's go have a look. Wow. You know, my first impressions of being in here were it's warm, there's no wind, the ground is relatively flat, which I'm unused to with gardening, as you know, from both the allotments and the home garden here. And it's really beautiful as well. Welcome to my Polycrub. She's 4 by 7 meters in size, so a really, really good size, and made out of a mixture of materials, including timber and polycarbonate plastic for the skin. And the hoops, so the supports, they are made out of a recycled material, which we'll talk about in a sec. It's quite warm in here. Let's see how warm it is exactly. I've put this thermometer in, I've moved it from the greenhouse. And let's see here, since I put it in, it's gotten up to a maximum of 33.3 degrees Celsius. And right now it's reading just about 30. Now, because it does get quite warm, I've decided to have stable doors on either side. And this is for ventilation, so I can open the top and leave the bottom closed if I wanted to, or I could open them both up. And also because I like the look of them, and I like the idea of maybe being in here in winter or even in spring and autumn and having the lower area closed. I don't think it will keep Maggie out. There's no way. But it's just nice for just a bit of ventilation. It's like having a window open, the top, and they're at both ends. So beautiful. I feel so incredibly lucky to have this Polycrub, and it's going to be so useful for my vegetable garden and for growing lots of other plants. Comet heard that Maggie was getting all of this attention on the channel, so he's decided to come out and introduce himself. This is Comet, Maggie's stepbrother, I guess, adopted brother. We got him last year with his sister Portia, the little white one that runs around as well. And Commie, unlike Maggie, is very snuggly. He just wants to be held and carried all the time. Commie, watch out for that. Commie. I ordered the Polycrub sight unseen, in person, and then I kept it a bit of a secret. I didn't tell very many people that what I was actually building was a Polycrub. And I did that because I wanted it to be a little bit of a surprise, but I also didn't want to jinx anything, because it just took so long for it to arrive from the Shetland Islands, and also there was the build and getting the site prepared and everything. And so I kept it on the down low, and I only told a few people. And one of the few people that I did tell was my friend Karen, who works as a gardener here on the Isle of Man. And it just turned out that one of her clients is the only other person here on the island who has a Polycrub. And so they invited me over, Aunt Nicola, who has the Polycrub, and I got to finally see a real one in real life. And seeing it is just, it just doesn't compare to what you can see on a video. It is just such a beautiful structure, but also seeing how someone else has beds built inside and how they're using it. She's even installed electricity, so there's lights inside, and there's irrigation. She has water butts outside and drip irrigation. And seeing all of that, even early on in the year, you could really gauge how warm it is, this lovely controlled environment, and it just got me so excited for my own polycrub. And on cue, we have Maggie nosing around the pea structure. Maggie has been supervising the build of the polycrub. She's been inside, lounging around, keeping an eye on John Dog and Dave, who built it for me. I don't think that she'll spend very much time in there. I might be wrong, maybe more so in winter. It's just so warm in there and she has such a thick coat. Now, I've said before, a polycrub is a greenhouse polytunnel hybrid, and Polycrub is the only manufacturer of this particular type of structure, and it has been designed and is certified by engineering professionals to withstand forces, so wind forces of up to 120 miles an hour, which is pretty strong winds for Great Britain. And so I'm pretty confident that this is going to withstand Isle of Man winters. There are quite a few reasons why I chose a polycrub over a traditional polytunnel or a large greenhouse, but there are 5 main reasons. The first reason is specifically to do with the polycarbonate plastic that it's made out of. It's really durable, and this material can last upwards of 35 years, and it's also difficult to damage. And that's really important if you've got stormy weather like we have on the Isle of Man, or you've got cats. And I've heard some horror stories of both seagulls and cats ripping the polyfilm that polytunnels are made out of, and then you have to replace it. There's a big rip in it. And also with traditional polytunnels, you do have to replace that plastic cover occasionally. And I think 5 years is average. Some last a bit longer, some last less. But with the polycrub, I don't ever have to think about replacing the plastic. The second reason is also specifically about the polycarbonate plastic cover that the polycrub has. The plastic is very high in insulating properties, and it has low heat loss properties compared to the polyfilm that you find in traditional polytunnels or the glass in greenhouses. So it's better insulated and it won't lose as much heat, and that makes it very attractive for those of us who garden in mild to moderate climates like Britain, like the north of the United States and Canada. And the plastic is also UV protected, and the way that it directs light inside is much more efficient than ordinary glass. The third reason is pretty apparent. This is a really robust growing structure, and you saw it in part of the building phase, you see it now. It's not going anywhere. This is a pretty permanent structure, and it's been designed to withstand a lot of abuse. Storms, wind, frost, vandalism, things hitting it from storms. So imagine that you've got some debris flying around in the wind and it smacks the side. It will survive that. And the structure itself is guaranteed for in excess of 10 years. But again, the plastic will last 35 years roundabouts. And so I'm really confident that this is something that I'm going to be able to depend on, that's going to stand up to our weather, and that's going to be a really lovely growing space. The fourth reason that I chose a polycrub over a polytunnel or a greenhouse for this area is because of its green credentials. The organization that creates Polycrub is part of a charity, and so the profits that they make from the sale of Polycrubs gets reinvested right back into their community. Also, these black tubes that make up the structure, these are all recycled from the aquaculture industry. And in the Shetland Islands, that seems to be quite an industry. And in the past, these black tubes were sent to landfills, and also they would wash up on the beaches. And so Polycrubs make use of them. So it saves all of this plastic from being disposed of, and it is really sturdy. It's perfect for the job.
The fifth reason that I chose a polycrub is because it's beautiful. Simply that, it is such a beautiful structure, beautiful growing space. And it's practical too, so it fits the bill. Form follows function, it's gonna last a long time. It is ideal for growing on the Isle of Man and other parts of Britain. And just look at it. It's stunning. I absolutely love it.
There are a few things that I need to do next. The first of which has to do with the stable doors. You can see that right now they're being held open by a couple of stones, including one of those quartz crystal stones. So I need to find a solution to keep them open, because if those stones were not there, they'd be flying all over the place. And Nicola, on her Polycrub, she has a large hook that she had custom made from a local blacksmith, and she said it wasn't too dear as far as price. So I'm going to investigate that route, and potentially I could also just put something there in the ground. This is as far as my doors open as well, because of the way that we constructed the stable doors, and plastic is covering the hinges here. So this is as far as it goes back. Other people with other Polycrubs have different types of doors, and so if you design yours, that might be something to take into consideration. The stable doors on the back side, something occurred to me after the guys had finished, and it's just that I'm rarely going to be approaching these doors from the outside. I'm going to be approaching them from the inside. And so if I want to open them, I'm going to have to go all the way around outside so that I can unlatch it and open it up, even the top. So I'm thinking it's probably wise to have some latches made that can be locked from the inside, and then that way I can just leave the outside ones unlocked and use that one to open it up. And you'll also notice that the top and the bottom don't have a latch yet, so I need to get some kind of a latch to hold them together for cases that I just want to use these as a normal door. A more immediate job to get done, though, is getting beds built inside the Polycrub. Now, if you look through that window in front of us, there are tons of seedlings, and they are growing quickly. And they're mainly heat-loving plants, and they are destined for the Polycrub. So I need to get them a place to grow on very, very soon. Now, the problem is that if you look at the ground in here, it is solid. It is just a fill of rubble, hardcore, and it was put here before we moved in. It's just rock hard. You need a jackhammer to get through it. So it's not an option to grow directly in the ground. So I will be building beds, raised beds in here. And there'll be one going right down the middle, and then a bed on that far side there, and a bed over here on the left. So 3 beds running parallel. Look who's decided to join us. Nice stretch. Maybe you will be in here more often. The plants that are growing in the beds, they'll have a lot of vertical space to grow up, but we don't yet have supports put into the top here for me to tie string into. So that's another thing that needs to go in. So some rails of some sort. And also I need to think about irrigation and water collection and so many things. It's all very exciting though. And this is going to make such a great space for me to grow all of those heat-loving plants that I've talked about before and that I've not been able to grow as much of because it is just such a cool climate here. This Polycrub is really going to be a game changer for me.
There are a few things to do now. I've got to get on top of those latches and maybe investigating on putting the closing mechanisms on the inside of the back stable doors. And then the next video that is going to feature the Polycrub is going to be building the beds inside and how I'm going to be doing those and how I'm filling them as well. And I also need to start thinking about irrigation and water storage as well, and maybe water capture, and looking at different ideas for that, because one of the most challenging aspects in the summer is keeping all of your plants watered. And I have a big enough garden as it is. I have a big enough garden as it is, so if I can reduce some of the time spent watering inside the Polycrub, that's going to be really helpful, and that will probably be a combination of drip irrigation and Oyas. And you've seen an Oya video from me before. They're very simple to make. I use them in the greenhouse every year, and they are a low-tech watering system or a self-watering pot that you can make easily in about 5 minutes. So again, the next video on the Polycrub is going to cover putting in those beds and putting in irrigation, and then it will be time for planting. And all of those seedlings that I'm growing inside are going to find a new home in my new Polycrub. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you next week here on Lovely Greens. Bye for now.